I'd like to start by to read a question from a comment letter that Prometheum sent in response to the SEC's December 2020 Special Purpose Broker-Dealer Framework. Quote, "The definition of a digital asset security as used in the proposal is a digital asset that meets the definition of a security under the federal securities laws. This definition puts a burden on the industry to determine which digital assets are securities. As a result, we believe the clarity is needed to understand the regulatory framework they must comply with," end quote. That was in a letter dated April 26 from Prometheum, specifically signed by Benjamin S. Kaplan, co-CEO of the company. I offer this into the record without objection. This concern, which Prometheum themselves raised in 2020, probably sounds familiar for those who track this committee closely. It is the exact same concern we've heard from witnesses in front of this committee before. How can a broker-dealer register if they don't know which assets are a security and which are not? Further, it makes the same argument that other firms have made, that the lack of clarity from the SEC puts an undue burden on the industry. Mr. Kaplan, in your testimony, you were very confident that no new legislation is needed in the digital asset space to clarify this question. What has changed between the date of this letter in 2021 and when your firm called for clarity, and now? What has changed?
Over the 2+ years since that time, there's been additional enforcement actions and statement by the SECs which have clarified any questions that we had in regards to the designation of a digital asset as a security.
Mr. Kaplan, Prometheum's website says that Prometheum ATS supports, quote, "many tokens that mostly trade on crypto exchanges," end quote. I'd like to dig in on that just a little bit. Can Prometheum customers trade in Ether? If your answer is yes, please explain how.
Not currently.
Can Prometheum customers trade in Bitcoin? If your answer is yes, please explain how.
No.
Just for the audience at home's benefit, Ether and Bitcoin make up more than 60% of the digital asset market. Mr. Kaplan, given that either Ether and Bitcoin make up more than 60% of the digital asset market, if the current system is working, why can't your customers trade the most popular and widely used digital assets?
Regulation and new ATSs and custodians should take a crawl, walk, run approach, and essentially they will proceed to add additional assets and abilities as time goes on. I'd like to point out when the...
I'm going to reclaim my time. Mr. Kaplan, did Prometheum receive any additional exemptive relief from the SEC that has not been publicly shared?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. Prometheum's special purpose broker-dealer license does not address the core issue. There is not a consistent definition of a digital asset security within current law. This point was made obvious when Chair Gensler could not say definitively whether Ether is a digital asset security when asked by Chairman McHenry in this very room a couple months ago. In other words, that same question that Prometheum themselves raised in their 2021 comment letter is still unanswered. That's why legislation is needed. That's the problem that the chairman's bill works to solve. To testify in front of our committee that your company's charter, which only allows for trading in a very small subset of assets, is evidence that no legislation is needed, just doesn't make sense. If anything, the fact that Prometheum's customers cannot trade some of the most popular digital assets is an illustration of the broader problem, Mr. Kaplan. I yield back.